Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into one of the world's most ancient and honestly beautifully structured languages. We're going to demystify Sanskrit, but not by just memorizing a bunch of words. Instead, we're going to understand the simple, powerful logic that makes it all work. So think of this as your very first friendly lesson. So before we jump into the grammar, let's just zoom out for a second and think about a bigger idea. How does any language take a bunch of simple words and weave them into these incredibly complex thoughts, stories, and philosophies? Well, Sanskrit has a particularly elegant answer, and it's all built on a foundation of really clear, consistent rules. Today, we're going to learn the 3 core rules that are basically the blueprint for that entire world of meaning. Okay, our first building block is the absolute heart of any sentence. I like to call it the sentence engine. It's that fundamental connection between who's doing the action and the action itself. This is the rule of subject and verb agreement. Now, the formal Sanskrit term is Kartakriyapad Samanvaya. All this really means is that the verb has to agree with its subject. But here's where Sanskrit does something really cool. The verb isn't just a static word. It actually changes its shape, its ending, to perfectly match the subject. Think of it like a key that's been uniquely cut to fit one specific lock. Let's see this in action. It makes so much more sense when you see it. On that first row, notice the subject is singular, he or sa. The verb is paṭhati. Okay, simple enough. Now, look at the second row. When the subject becomes plural, they or they, the verb transforms into paṭhanti. See that? That little change at the end is the agreement in action. The verb itself is telling us how many people are reading. And it doesn't just stop with the number of people. The verb also changes for the person, whether it's me, you, or someone else. So if you, dlam, are reading, the verb is paṭhasi. If I, aham, am reading, it becomes paṭhāmi. So the crucial thing to get here is that a single verb in Sanskrit can tell you who is doing the action and how many of them there are. It's just incredibly efficient. Okay, so we've built our sentence engine. It runs, but it's a little plain, right? Now it's time to add the detail, the description, the richness. Our second building block, adjective and noun agreement, is how we add all that color and really bring our sentences to life. The principle here is called Visheshana-Visheshya-Samanvaya. What this means is that descriptive words, or adjectives, are kind of like chameleons. They don't just have one fixed form. Instead, they actually change their appearance to perfectly match the noun they're describing. And this is where Sanskrit's concept of grammatical gender really comes into play. Let's see how this works. The basic word for large is Vishālā. But watch what happens. When it's describing the masculine noun tree, vṛkṣaḥ, it takes the masculine form, Vishālaḥ. But when it describes the feminine noun garden, vāṭikā, it changes its ending to match, becoming Vishālā. The adjective literally wears the same gender as the noun it's describing. It's pretty neat. And just to complete the picture, this rule of course applies to the neuter gender too. So to say large building, where building, pawanam, is a neuter noun, the adjective adapts again, becoming Vishālaḥ. It's a totally consistent logical system. The adjective always reflects the noun that it's connected to. So we have our engine, and we've added color. Our final building block is all about making the language smooth, efficient, and just elegant. It's about avoiding clumsy repetition. This is the principle that creates linguistic flow, noun and pronoun agreement. This rule is called Sangya Sarvanam Samanvaya. Now, this is something we do intuitively in English all the time, right? But in Sanskrit, it's super precise. A pronoun, which is just a word that stands in for a noun, has to agree perfectly with the noun it's replacing, specifically in its gender and its number. This just makes sure there's never any confusion about who or what you're talking about. Let's look at this table, because this really highlights it. In English, notice, we just use they for both sentences. But Sanskrit is way more precise. When we're talking about boys, Bālakāḥ, which is a masculine plural noun, the pronoun for they is they. But when we're talking about girls, Bālikāḥ, a feminine plural noun, the pronoun for they changes to tāḥ. This agreement ensures absolute clarity, which is incredibly valuable in complex stories or philosophy. And there you have it. Just like that, you now have the blueprint for building clear, correct, and logical sentences in Sanskrit. These 3 rules of agreement are the foundation that everything else is built on. This chart really sums it all up perfectly. Subject-verb agreement is the engine, connecting the doer and the action. Adjective-Noun Agreement adds the color, connecting the description to the thing being described. And Noun-Pronoun Agreement creates the flow, connecting a noun to its replacement. Engine, color, and flow. That's your system right there. Okay, so knowing the rules is one thing, but putting them into practice is how we really learn. So let's move on to a practical section to test our knowledge and maybe highlight a few common trip-ups for beginners. As you start practicing, really try to focus on these 3 common hurdles. First, double-check that your verb ending actually matches your subject. Second, make sure your adjective's gender dresses to match the noun. And third, always pick the pronoun that agrees with the original noun's gender. If you can master these, you're going to have a super solid foundation. All right, pop quiz time. First question, remembering our very first rule, the sentence engine. Which of these options correctly says, I read? Take a second and think about it. The correct answer is B, Aham, paṭhāmi. If you got that, nice one. That ami ending is the specific one that agrees with the first-person subject, I or Aham. Remember, paṭhati goes with the third person, like he or she. Let's try one more. This one's about our second rule, adding color. If garden, vāṭikā, is a feminine noun, how would you correctly say large garden? And the correct answer is B, Vishālā vāṭikā. The adjective, our little chameleon, Vishāl, adapts and takes on that feminine a ending to perfectly match the feminine noun it's describing. So let's wrap this all up. We started with this really big question about how language works. And we found that, in Sanskrit at least, the answer is this incredibly logical and consistent system. We've just learned the 3 foundational rules that allow for the creation of this entire world of meaning. And that really brings us to our final thought. I mean, what we've looked at today is just the starting blueprint. It's the simple, elegant logic at the core. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you can get this much precision and elegance from just 3 foundational rules, what other profound structures and wonders does this ancient language hold for us to discover? Thank you for joining this explainer.